techniques here. I've taken those two colors, the blue and the lighter blue. We have our gray back. I've got a second chip brush. Don't intermix. If we take the first color and we give it a little crosshatchy, and you see how that's bleeding through the base color? Then I take my lighter blue, and then I can drag some color in here. Oh, a little more up here. And a little more of this over there. Then we might take some water. Give it a little shower. Let it go. Let that dry. We're going to do what's called dry brushing. It can be for wood grain. Rough edge brushes are actually a little bit better. When brushes get worn down, they sometimes work a little better for dry brushing. But with dry brushing, we're going to take and dip it in our color and have a scrap of rag, a piece of wood. I tap it to get extra off. If I just stick it in here and start to go, I'm painting, I'm not dry brushing. Now, I can take some of the excess off and lightly, this is a little bit of a heavy, this is pretty good right in there, in this neighborhood. This is very light. This is very light dry brush. From the audience, that's hardly noticeable. Sometimes you'll walk up to scenery and you'll take a look at it and go, wow, that's heavy. But remember, we have that aesthetic distance. People are 25, 30 feet away. Let me grab this over here real fast. I believe this was for Ernest. So this is the wood panel look. And remember, when you sat in the house, this was gorgeous. He may come back afterwards. This is all flat paint. If you wanted to, you can come back when this is dry and put a polyacrylic, which is it's a brand name. I think Minwax makes it, but you put a finish on top that will give this a satin, semi-gloss, gloss finishes. Satin is probably as much of a shine you're going to want, unless specifically you want that shine on there, as it will be reflective. But this is multiple layers. He had a primary colors he put on, and then a series of washes of color that went on top of this, which are watered down. A lot of this stuff, this kind of texturing, it's easier to do when it's laying flat. See how this is running? You could not do this standing upright. Running's good. This is another way to get kind of a marble look. You can make marble look like this. We have a feather duster here in the scene shop, which has been picked over pretty well. I'm going to pick one more out of it. But this is made out of real feathers. This is a real feather duster. You need to have one that has real feathers. Real feathers, because synthetic, though they are great for dusting, when paint gets on them, they just clump up. But real feathers don't really absorb the paint. If you take, let's see if I can get that. You can paint with this feather. Right? Put a little color in there. Let that run now. We'll just let that run. But remember, if you're doing see, there's a you're going to be doing a whole floor, you're going to be busy. But the added effect is cool. Scumble. All right, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a little more water to our primary blue. I want it a little thinner. I'm going to do some spattering. Now, spatter, another texture technique. We're going to dip our color, and I knock off the lot. You can still, I'm going to use this little brush, but it's a matter of tapping. And to get a consistent, this is a little heavy. These are about right. It's still a little thick. I'm getting big lumps, so I can thin this quite a bit. And what I'll do is I'll take this, knock off some of the excess. Still pretty heavy. But if you can spatter your scenery laying flat, it's a lot easier. If this is up and you're trying to spatter, you run the risk of it running. You know what I mean, Bean? So there's spatter. That's not really consistent. Now, if we're doing a whole floor, you might use a garden sprayer, pump-up garden sprayer. They have little, I think, 1 gallon sized handheld ones. You have to experiment with it to get the right consistency of spatter that you want. If I just take my brush and do this, I'm splattering. And if I put my brush on edge rather than flat, see the difference? Again, there's another texture technique that may be what your floor needs. I'm going to take some masking tape. Just do a little example. However I want to do this. You can do brick this way. This is just to give you an idea. Let's just do that. So when you spatter a stick on its edge, you're catching the brush by the ferrule, this portion of the brush. And if I'm doing a floor, I'm using a big 4-inch brush for this. But for this educational purposes, ooh, look at that. That's looking pretty good. Okay. Then let's come back here. And let's do a 2-color spatter on this project. This is a lot wetter. And what any of these texturings is spatter, a lot of this will hide a lot of sins in the scenery. We're gonna let that dry a little bit before we pull that up, but we're gonna let that sit. Now we're gonna get really messy, so let's do this first. Well, we got this here. I'm gonna take a pan, could be a roller pan, whatever. And I'm gonna wet this. I'm gonna wet my feather duster a little bit. I could run it under the sink. All right, let's see if this has got any life. So if I take my feather duster and I'm just dipping the bristles down in here. A new one with a full head of feathers in it is really nice for this, but and you're moving it around. That's feather duster. That's a great texture. If you do this let's say we need a backdrop, a masking drop of a foliage, something just for that. I could base this, I could base a flat or whatever in a green tone, then do this in a series of lighter and darker hues, a little darker green, a little lighter green, and do this on top of it. And it gives you kind of, especially when you've got big full feathers still left, and it gives a nice bamboo kind of effect. It reads really well. You could come back in there and do a little lining to this stuff if you want, but that's a great technique. It's great on floors.